Hello, thank you for joining me for another Dear Sam Help Horsemanship Series. So this week I've had a lot of people write to me because it's springtime in the Northern Hemisphere. And for a lot of folks, weather, despite world events, has been limiting activities with their horses. And so now as things are warming up and melting, people are excited to get out there with their horses. And one of the biggest questions is, or challenges that people tend to find is when they ask, Sam, how come it feels like I'm starting over with my horse? It feels like, things have been going really great last summer or last fall. And then at the beginning of the season, it feels like I'm starting all over again with my horse. And I'm just not sure why. And this is something that comes up a lot because of a misunderstanding in the way in which we are considering that we are helping or working with our horse. And many folks are taught and encouraged to work their horses in patterns, in certain routines. We do things in a certain way all the time. Maybe there's routines and patterns because of lifestyle and job commitments or other commitments in our life. And so we only arrive to work with the horse at the same time if the horse isn't kept at our home. Maybe the facility location has limitations as far as that you don't have options in where and how you tack up your horse, or where you mount and dismount, or the ride from the mounting area to the arena or whatnot. But basically, everybody's creating routines and patterns whether or not they realize it. Often it's out of convenience and facility limitation, but sometimes it's actually intentionally done in order with the thought being that, the more I practice the same routine, the better my horse is going to understand what we're doing. And I'll be totally straightforward. I'm completely against routines and patterns. And the number one reason why is because I find in both humans and horses that the more routine and patterned that they are, the less available they are to, one, acknowledge what's actually happening in current or real time in the world, and two, the less adaptable they are for anything, whether it's an unexpected moment, whether it's an emergency, whether it's just a second thought of, whoops, I forgot something and I have to go back to the barn even though we already left once. Whatever degree it might be, I find that most horses, especially like lesson horses, who have come to learn what is always going to be expected of them, are actually the least adaptable horses out there. The dude string horses, where basically no matter what the rider does, they're just kind of following the horse in front of them. These are not adaptable horses in the sense of when the rider has an opinion or would like to direct the horse's thought and then his movement, and basically it feels like the horse is blowing you off or that it's resistance. Now the horse is only doing that because it's learned the pattern and the routine that makes the human often go away. So the faster they comply with it, the less pressure is created by the human. And sometimes it may actually seem like, the horse is doing what you want. Often it will seem like the horse is doing what you want to be helpful, as people explain it ahead of time. So let's say opening and closing gates from sitting horseback. I have many people that will show me like, look how great my horse is. They'll line right up to the gate and I don't even have to do anything. And I can just lean over and open that gate and that horse just goes right on through and turns around. And, it just makes it so easy. And so I say, hey, that's great. Okay, now in the middle of that horse opening that gate or helping you open that gate, ask him to halt. And all of a sudden they're like amazing, smart, brilliant, these kudos that they've been giving the horse. Animal or equine partner winds up showing a whole lot of resistance when the rider asks for an interruption in the movement and the thought and the anticipation in a situation such as opening the gate. And all of a sudden the horse can't stand still and he's diving forward and he's pushing through the rider's reins and he's drifting with his hindquarters, and people go, well, he's never done that before. And then I ask, well, have you ever asked that before? And they go, well, no. And for me, it's a great example to show people that there are many times in which the human is so thankful that our horse isn't causing us like fear or stress or concern or issues or those sort of things, that we're just willing to kind of accept whatever the horse offers on his terms. And as long as it doesn't feel scary and dangerous, we're pretty happy that things went well. And that's what I call being hopeful during the ride, or surviving the ride, where you don't really feel like you're in the driver's seat. You don't really feel like you are specifying ahead of time or proactively what it is that you want, how it is that you want it, and that you're communicating that to the horse. And instead, you're just kind of becoming passive and soft in the saddle, offering less and less specific communication, hoping that the horse does things kind of how you would, feel okay doing them. And as long as he does, then we usually kind of just go on and we keep moving forward. So this comes into play in terms of when people go, well, I wonder what my horse is going to be like this spring, or it feels like in the springtime after this big delay or maybe inconsistent work throughout the winter, that my horse has like forgotten everything that we've done last year. And so I'll ask people, well, how did you present things? And they'll say, well, last year we did, X, Y, and Z in this manner, in this form, or this place, and it seemed great. So this year I decided to change it up. And all of a sudden they're feeling a resistance from their horse. And so I will explain that often it's not about that they are asking, something new or wanting to expand maybe what they've done with their horse. The reality is the horse is responding to the change in the pattern, because that horse is mentally so fixated on the pattern that he is unavailable to even consider that something different might be asked by the human. And that's where we then feel the resistance, and we feel maybe a defensiveness. Maybe we feel him ignoring our aids and our communication. Maybe it feels like it is causing enough concern in the horse that he is physically acting out in behaviors that make us feel uncomfortable. Whatever the case, however he copes, which really isn't coping with the change in the pattern or the change in the expectation of the horse, it's a great opportunity for reflection, for the person to then say, oh my gosh, wait a minute, time out. How many things do I do in the everyday interaction with the horse that maybe is unintentionally teaching this horse to expect a pattern, to expect a routine? And how often do I change it up? And unfortunately, humans, like horses, find security in patterns. And there is this false illusion that everything is going well as long as we stay within this pattern or this routine. But here's the reality, okay? Whether you're competitive or not, whether you're a trail rider, you prefer riding in the arena, doesn't matter the tack, the equipment, the breed, the age, any of those sort of things with the horse. The more creative that we riders can be, and the more specific and the more clear and intentional, which means we have to get that way before we try and communicate with the horse, then our horse can learn to never have an expectation of where we're riding or what we do when we begin the ride. One of the big things, most people get on their horse and they're always tracking to the left if they're in an arena. No matter what, they always start off tracking to the left. Just little things to notice. Do you get on and off your horse in the same location? Do you get on and off your horse and from both sides of him? Do you practice leading your horse from both sides? Do you practice tacking up your horse from both sides? Do you practice having a different intention every single time that you head out to ride, or are you waiting to see what he's going to do? These are all just little ways where you can actually create adaptability within your horse, and what we call a mental availability, or where your horse's brain is available to hear what it is that you're asking of him. Now, he may not respond exactly ideal from the start, and he may have some distractions, or what I call the horse's checklist. We'll talk about that next week. But it will feel like you have influence, or the ability to influence and then perhaps refine the conversation that happens between you and your horse. But the more that you stay in those patterns and routines and false illusions of security, then whether it's springtime or a period of time where there's been a gap between you working with your horse consistently, or even if you are working with your horse consistently and one day you decide to change things up, you're really creating defensiveness in the horse and resistance in the horse that just is completely unnecessary. So think about your creativity. Sometimes it's hard, I know, when space is limited, but any sort of change in you, the horse will begin to recognize. And for those of you that do have patternized horses that are stuck in their expectation, it may take a little bit to undo what they are expecting the experience to be between you and them in the interactions. But the more creative you are, the more adaptable you are in your own mind, then the more adaptable the horse can become, which makes him better prepared and less emotionally and physically reactive to the unexpected moments, to the emergencies, to the changing things up, to whatever may happen in life, your horse can then still be reasonable and be able to hear what it is that you're asking of him. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to see you next week in the Dear Sam Horse Help series, and we are going to talk about the horse's checklist.